For when you gaze long into the abyss gazes also into you. My thalassophobia is pretty mild. Like, I don't have panic attacks over it or anything, but I feel it enough that talking about the ocean, seeing the ocean, being in the ocean, I'm pretty much immediately in a nope response. I'm not crying, sobbing, and shitting, mind you, but I do understand why someone would be that way when it comes to the ocean because, man, it is not okay. So of course I did the smartest thing any thalassophobic could do. I played Subnautica. Subnautica is objectively an amazing game. It's imaginative, well made aside from the occasional jank, and has multiple gameplay systems working together to give their player a fairly creative freedom in terms of how to respond to their environment. Additionally, the aura and ambiance throughout the game, how it handles discovery and exploration, the light but meaningful touch of guidance without being overly intrusive. Almost everything in Subnautica is executed superbly and leads to one hell of a great game. Yes, one hell of a great game, but also one that is deeply uncomfortable and unsettling for me to play through. And even as I enjoyed the game for how well made it was, the quality of the design, and what a genuinely compelling experience Subnautica offered, Subnautica. I actively wrestled with my discomfort and fear throughout the majority of the game. There's honestly a whole plethora of reasons why the sea makes my skin crawl, and my small lizard brain alerts me with cries of, "This is wrong." But after spending a good deal of time with Subnautica, I think I better understand what it is about this game, and indeed the ocean itself, that is so deeply disturbing and frightening to me. And it isn't the water, it isn't the lack of air to breathe, it isn't the strange and alien quality of the seascape, or even the dangerously threatening predators within the sea that we have little if any understanding of. Don't get me wrong, all of these things are frightening and make me big uncomfortable. But these aren't the fears that have wormed their way fully under my skin. No, the element of Subnautica that truly scares me can also be found, of all places, in the depth of space, seen prominently in another mind-blowingly great game, the OuterWilds. Subnautica and OuterWilds are both gateways to a terrible, infinite, pants-shitting abyss. I'm not sure when I made the connection between my dread of Subnautica and my dread of OuterWilds. Sometime after visiting the ecological dead zone in Subnautica. I wonder now if I would have made this connection if I hadn't by pure chance played OuterWilds and then Subnautica back to back. I don't think I even realized the depth of meaning behind this connection in the moment. It dawned on me afterwards, slowly, an epiphany that I couldn't be rid of once it took root in my brain. I still do have some touch of thalassophobia, that is, fear of the ocean. There's all kinds of things about the ocean and in the ocean that I find really unsettling and fundamentally wrong. But my true fright kicks in specifically centered around the abyss within the ocean, that utter void that can be found when you go deeper and deeper into the vast depths and into the darkness of the true ocean. And it is so perfectly encapsulated and represented by the ecological dead zone. That infinite abyss messes with my head. The scope of it, the vastness of it, like a yawning portal into a fundamentally different reality. A reality where my terror comes from the lack of terror, a lack of anything, a lack of everything. Ironlung is an hour-long indie horror game by David Zemansky, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name. I mention it here because to read the premise of Ironlung on paper, it would seem like an easy shoo-in for a game that would trigger Thalasophobia. The entire game takes place in a tiny, cramped, progressively breaking submarine at the bottom of an ocean of blood on a mysterious moon in a universe where almost all the known planets and stars have disappeared. This leaves only a few hundred humans left drifting through space on a few isolated space stations. The scant handful of humans are searching for answers and any sign of life on the very few moons left. All of the above is background lore that, while I personally found it to be the most interesting part of the entire game, all of it is peripheral at best and can be missed entirely if you don't do a bit of sleuthing through various files at a computer terminal in the submarine. Nearly the entire short and succinct game is about navigating your way through the blood ocean using nothing but sonar and what amounts to a giant Polaroid picture device to display images outside of your cramped, rickety old submarine, and 9 times out of 10, all the pictures that you will get are either fuzzy, indistinct pictures of something vague and uncertain, or more likely, nothing at all. The horror element lies in the knowledge that you are not alone in the ocean. Through snapshots you take, and more prominently, the obtrusive noises of things moving outside of your shitty little submarine, it's very obvious that something or some things lurk in the ocean around you. The ambient noise, the frail and broken submarine you travel in, and the sense of alien presence all around you combine to prey on your ignorance of what is out there in the ocean, combining with your all-too-present awareness of just how vulnerable and helpless you are. Ironlung didn't work for me, not even a bit. And that puzzled me initially. Why was it so much less scary for me than Subnautica was? If anything, Ironlung should have been far worse. It had a much more direct, oppressive, hopeless, adversarial vibe. At no point during the short hour-long game is there anything resembling comfort, safety, or even really knowing what's going on around you. You're in a tiny, claustrophobic, doomed submarine at the bottom of a hostile ocean on an abandoned world surrounded by unknown alien life. A lot of this could be said for Subnautica word for word and be true. Yet Subnautica lacked the committed lean into a pure horror atmosphere that strongly categorized Ironlung. So why did Ironlung not frighten me? I thought on it a while before it became clear. A key difference between the horror in Ironlung and the horror in Subnautica was a matter of focus and space. Though in theory both games were located in similar spaces, they placed you within those spaces in entirely different ways and played to entirely different fears. Your experience in Ironlung was limited to the cramped, tight, oppressive little submarine, and in every sense it was a claustrophobic's worst nightmare. If claustrophobia were a thing I were afflicted by, I imagine that Ironlung would have been terrifying for me. And this is where Subnautica works so much better. Subnautica lets you out. It allows you to come out into the space, to explore it and be free in it, and that space inevitably opens into an expansive, seemingly limitless abyss, the total opposite of the tiny space Ironlung occupies. It's in this abyss that my fears come alive. The more I explore and examine my relationship with the fear that I feel during Subnautica, the more I understand it cannot be called Thalasophobia any longer. In truth, I found a better embodiment of this abyssal fear in playing the OuterWilds than I ever felt while playing Ironlung, and there is no oceanic connection in OuterWilds. Well, that's mostly true. Giant's Deep exists in OuterWilds, and the deeper you dive into it, the more void-like it becomes, darker and heavier and more unknowably vast the further you plunge into Giant Deep's dark, watery heart. But OuterWilds has a more expansive, more infinite abyss to fear than the one found in Giant's Deep. In some ways, space feels strikingly similar to the abyss of the ocean. In other ways, it's entirely different. For most of OuterWilds, I was honestly fine. Don't get me wrong, OuterWilds was one big horror game to me, something I talk about extensively in another video. I'll link that in the corner and in the description below if you haven't given it a watch yet. In terms of my fear of the abyss and how deeply space plays into that fear, I really didn't notice that particular element for most of the game. I spent most of my time zooming around the solar system, chasing down this planet or that, navigating my way between the worlds in pursuit of answers to the many mysteries of the game, and that didn't particularly bother me either. Then at some point I turned my attention outward. This is the doorway to the abyss. The infinite nothing of space stretching out before us, unknowably vast, hopelessly boundless. The great black void of the ocean times 100, 1,000, 100,000 and beyond. For what bounds or ends does space have? How many vast and endless oceans would fit into the entire vast endlessness of space? Compared to the abyss of deep space, the enormous depth of the ocean is as small and insignificant as, well, me. I tried to go to the abyss, just like I tried to go to the abyss of the ecological dead zone in Subnautica. I did this even though both encounters with the abyss made me literally shake like a little pussy. And no, I will not try to explain to you why I am so eager to embrace something that terrifies me. Because I can't. I have no words for why I am hellbound to face the abyss. Maybe I have some subconscious desire to prove Nietzsche wrong, or prove him right. Maybe I want to give a first-hand account of what happens when you stare too long into the abyss. Maybe I want to know what happens when the infinite gazes back into me. I don't know. All I know is I am terrified of the abyss. The idea of it, its infinite, uncontained nature. It's an infection in my mind, the idea of this thing that's not a thing, a place but not a place. Because it's too big to be contained in even the concept of a space that has a definable beginning and end. I can't remember a time when I didn't have a morbid, fearful fascination with this idea of the abyss and how that very idea makes me feel so small, so finite, so insignificantly unimportant in the face of something beyond comprehension. Whatever this abyss is, a place, a thing, a being, I don't even know anymore. I can't help but be drawn to it so that I might immerse myself in the infinite and confirm that it is indeed too great for me to comprehend, is too great for my mind to contain. It's almost as if the very idea of some place or being or force that defies my mind's capacity to fully perceive it is some kind of challenge. The concept itself breaks my brain a little, and I want to know if that kind of scope is even possible. What would it be like to try and fit something too vast into my small little brain and then break under the strain of too much understanding of too much? The cultists of H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu lore and every deranged cultist and madman inspired by Lovecraft's works seems silly and absurd. They're so obsessed with the knowledge of the outer gods and being so ancient and beyond the small world of humans that to know them will drive them insane. Most of them know this, and yet they seek the knowledge anyway, and for a long time, I thought this was an entirely contrived and foolish notion. And yet, I contemplate the abyss, and I see the reflection of those ancient gods in the endless darkness of the abyss's heart. And I think, perhaps, I begin to understand.